Hello! So, andito na naman ang inyong Lolo Ray, no, para magbasa-basa na naman ng batas. Habang nagpapababa ng kinain, kakatapos ko lang mag-lunch eh. So, naisip ko ituloy natin yung binasa natin last time, no? Ah, pero bago kasi tayo, sabi ko dun sa last na video ko magtutungo na tayo sa Chapter 7 ng National Internal Revenue Code kasama yung mga pagbabagong ginawa ng train law, which is yung excise tax on mineral products. Meron pala akong hindi nabasa, yung Section 150. Maraming pagbabagong ginawa doon ng train law. So, tara, basahin na muna natin bago tayo magtungo sa susunod na chapter. Okay. Section 150B, Sweetened Beverages. Sabi rito, letter A, rate and base of tax. At ito ay naging effective noong January 1, 2018. Sabi rito, a tax of 6 pesos per liter of volume capacity shall be levied, assessed, and collected on sweetened beverages using purely caloric sweeteners and purely non-caloric sweeteners or a mix of caloric and non-caloric sweeteners, provided that this tax rate shall not apply to sweetened beverages using high fructose corn syrup. Okay? Provided further that sweetened beverages using purely coconut sap, sugar, purely stevia glycosides shall be exempt from this tax. So pag ganon, pag coconut sap, sugar, and purely stevia glycosides, exempt siya sa tax na ito. Pero merong excise tax na 6 pesos per liter doon sa mga gumagamit ng purely caloric sweeteners or purely non-caloric sweeteners. Okay, magtungo tayo dun sa sinasabi niyang pangalawa. A tax of 12 pesos per liter volume capacity shall be levied, assessed, and collected on sweetened beverages using purely high fructose corn syrup or in combination with any caloric or non-caloric sweeteners. 12 pesos per liter of volume ang excise tax niya kapag gumagamit ka ng purely high fructose corn syrup in combination with any caloric or non-caloric sweetener. Yan, dinagdag yan ng train law. Section 150 pa rin. Dami siyang dinagdag Definition of terms. Sabi rito, sweetened beverages na sinasabi rito refers to non-alcoholic beverages of any constitution, whether liquid, powder, or concentrates daw ito. So, non-alcoholic beverages that are pre-packaged and sealed in accordance with the Food and Drug Administration standards that contain caloric and or non-caloric sweeteners added by the manufacturers and shall include but not be limited to the following. Okay, letter A, sweetened juice drinks. Letter B, sweetened tea. Letter C, all carbonated beverages. Letter D, flavored water. Letter E, energy and sports drinks. Letter F, other powdered drinks not classified as milk, juice, tea, and coffee. Letter G, cereal and grain beverages. And letter H, other non-alcoholic beverages that contain added sugar. Ano naman ibig sabihin ng caloric sweetener? Ito yung substance that is sweet and includes sucrose, fructose, and glucose that produces a certain sweetness. Yan. High fructose syrup refers to a sweet saccharide mixture containing fructose and glucose which is derived from corn and added to provide sweetness to beverages. Ano naman ang non-caloric sweetener? Refers to a substance that are artificially or chemically processed that produces a certain sweetness. These are substances which can be directly added to beverages such as aspartame, sucralose, saccharin, acesulfame, potassium, neotame, cyclamase, and other non-nutritive sweeteners approved by the Codex Alimentarius and adopted by the FDA. So, bakit natin define yung terms na yun? Para malaman natin kung alin sa kanila yung anong klaseng sweetener yung bubuwisan, di ba? O ano naman ang mga exclusions dito sa Section 150? Okay. Number 1, all milk products including plain milk, infant formula milk, follow-on milk, growing up milk, powdered milk, ready-to-drink milk, and flavored milk, fermented milk, soy milk, and flavored soy milk. Ikalawa, 100% natural fruit juices. Yung original liquid resulting from the pressing of fruit, the liquid resulting from the reconstitution of natural fruit juice concentrate. Yan daw, mga yan. Basta 100% galing sa pressing of fruit. Number 3, 100% natural vegetable juices. Exempted yan sa excise tax na ito. Number 4, meal replacement and medically indicated beverages. Number 5, ground coffee, instant soluble coffee, and pre-packaged powdered coffee products. So yung mga yan, excluded yan, napatawan ng excise tax para sa sweetened beverages. Okay, magtungo tayo sa letter D, filing of return. Yan na. Babayad tayo ng buwis, magpa-file tayo ng return, no? The provision of sections 130 and 131 of the NIRC o ng National Internal Revenue Code, shall apply to sweetened beverages. Ano naman ang mga penalties? Upon final findings by the Commissioner of Internal Revenue and or Customs that any manufacturer or importer in violation of this section misdeclares or misrepresents in the sworn statement provided in Section 130C of the NIRC as amended, any pertinent data or information, the penalty of summary cancellation, yan ang magiging parusa, summary cancellation or withdrawal of the permit to engage in business as manufacturer or importer of sweetened beverages as provided under Section 268 of the National Internal Revenue Code as amended shall be imposed. Ganon din naman, any corporation, association, or partnership, diba, shall be fined treble the amount of deficiency taxes, surcharges, and interest which may be assessed pursuant to this section. Kanina ko pa nakikita yung treble na yan. Iba ang pagkakaintindi ko sa treble. Ang akala ko nga triple ang magiging nila. Triple the amount of deficiency taxes. Pero naulit-ulit na puro treble Ngayon, alamin natin ang meaning ng treble. O ganun din. Parang triple nga rin. Tama rin yung 3 times as much or as many. So tama nga yung pagkakaintindi natin sa treble. Parang triple nung amount of deficiency taxes. Diba? So ganun din yan. Nabasa rin natin yung treble doon sa nagdaang live ko. So yun din ang ibig niya sabihin. Any person liable for any of the acts or omissions prohibited under this section shall be criminally liable and penalized under Section 254 of the National Internal Revenue Code as amended. Sabi niya. Ay, wait lang yung fan natin. Ayan, okay. So, any person daw who willfully any person daw liable for acts of omissions na pinagbabawal dito shall be penalized under Section 254 of the National Internal Revenue Code. At any person who willfully aids, tumutulong ka, or abets in the commission of any such act or omission shall be criminally liable in the same manner as the principal. Kung hindi ka naman citizen, if not a citizen of the Philippines, the offender shall be deported immediately after serving yung sentensya without further proceedings for deportation. Letter E. Specific responsibility of the Food and Drug Administration. Sinabi rito na starting June 1, 2018, the FDA shall require all manufacturers and importers of sweetened beverages covered by this act to indicate on the label the type of sweetener used, and on sweetened beverages in powder form, to indicate on the label the equivalent of each serving per liter of volume capacity. Ano naman yung duty of the commissioner, di ba? Sabi rito, it shall be the duty of the commissioner, among other things, to prescribe a materially unique, secure, and non-removable identification such as codes, stamps, or other markings to be firmly and conspicuously affixed on and form part of the label of all excisable sweetened beverages. At ang huling provision ng Section 150, sabi niya, at the start of the implementation of the Sugar Sweetened Beverage Tax, ito nga yung excise tax on sweetened beverages, and every year thereafter, the Department of Health, the Department of Science and Technology, and the Department of Finance shall review the impact of these provisions on its health objectives with the view of making recommendations on the tax rate on these beverages. So, tinataasan yung, siguro may purpose kasi sila, nakikipagtulungan nitong BIR and the Secretary of Finance, kasi sila ang masasabi mong nagpapatupad ng tax laws natin, no? Binuwisan yung mga produktong sweetened para mabawasan siguro yung mga may diabetes, sangayon sa programa rin siguro ng DOH. And at the same time, para tumaas yung koleksyon, no? Kasi mabenta yung mga sweetened beverages. Tumaas yung koleksyon ng buwis para madaming pera ang Pilipinas, di ba? Para may gamiting pera para sa basic services. Okay. Magtungo naman na tayo sa Section 151. Ito na talaga yung dapat na sisimulan natin ngayon. Chapter 7, Excise Tax naman on Mineral Products. Section 151. Okay, 151. Sige. May pagbabago ring dinulot ang train law dito sa National Internal Revenue Code. Rates of tax there shall be levied, assessed, and collected on minerals, mineral products, and quarry resources. Excise tax as follows. Number 1, on domestic or imported coal and coke, notwithstanding any incentives granted in any law or special law. Effective January 1, 2018, 50 pesos per metric ton ang iyong excise tax pagka coal, importation ng coal, domestic man or importation ng coal and coke products. Effective January 1, 2019 naman, magiging 100 pesos na ito per metric ton, and effective January 1, 2020, 150 pesos per metric ton. So malamang ngayon, kasi 2020 ngayon, December 2020 ngayon, nung nakaraang January, 150 na. Number 2, on all non-metallic minerals and quarry resources, mga nagkakwari, a tax of 4% based on the actual market value of the gross output. Yan ang basihan mo. 4% ng actual market value ng iyong gross output thereof at the time of removal, in the case of those locally extracted or produced, or the value used by the Bureau of Customs in determining tariff and customs duties, net of excise tax and value-added tax in the case of importation. So, dalawa yun yung pagbabasihan, either yung actual market value of the gross output o di naman yung value used by the Bureau of Customs. So, 4% noon ang magiging buwis mo sa mga non-metallic minerals na kinakwari mo, di ba? Notwithstanding the provision of paragraph 4 of subsection A of this section, locally extracted natural gas and liquefied natural gas shall not be subject to the excise tax imposed herein. So, hindi sila kasali dito sa sinasabi rito. Number 3, on all metallic minerals, a tax based on the actual market value of the gross output thereof at the time of the removal, in the case of those locally extracted or produced, or the value used by the Bureau of Customs in determining tariff and customs duties, net of excise tax and value-added tax. In the case of importation, in accordance with the following schedule, letter A, pag copper and other metallic materials, 4%, and kapag naman gold and chromite, 4% din. On indigenous petroleum, a tax of 6% na. Yun ang pinataw na ng train ngayon. Indigenous petroleum, 6% of the fair international market price thereof on the first taxable sale, barter, exchange, or such similar transaction. Such tax to be paid by the buyer or purchaser before removal from the place of production. The phrase first taxable sale, barter, exchange, or similar transaction means the transfer of indigenous petroleum in its original state to a first taxable transferee. The fair international market price shall be determined in consultation with an appropriate government agency. For the purpose of this subsection, indigenous petroleum shall include locally extracted mineral oil, hydrocarbon gas, bitumen, crude, asphalt, mineral gas, and all other similar or naturally associated substances, with the exception of coal, peat, bituminous shale, and or stratified mineral deposits. Okay. Ano naman ang purposes ng section natin? O, tingnan natin para maintindihan natin yung mga definitions, no? Ano sorry, nagkamali ako. For purposes of this section, i-define natin yung mga sinasabi, yung mga terms. Gross output shall be interpreted as the actual market value of minerals or mineral products or of a bullion from each mine or mineral land operated as a separate entity without any deduction from mining, milling, refining, as well as transporting, handling, marketing, or any other expenses. Yun ay ibig sabihin niya ng gross output niya. Provided nga lang that if the minerals or mineral products are sold or consigned abroad by the lessee or owner of the mine under CIF terms, the actual cost of ocean freight and insurance shall be deducted. Yan ang sinasabi niya. Minerals shall mean all naturally occurring inorganic substances found in nature, whether in solid, liquid, gaseous, or any intermediate state. Number 3, ang mineral products shall mean things produced and prepared in a marketable state. So, yun ang kaibahan niya sa minerals. Minerals and naturally occurring inorganic substances found in nature, whether solid, liquid, or gas. Mineral products shall mean things produced and prepared in a marketable state by simple treatment processes such as washing or drying, but without undergoing any chemical change or process or manufacturing by the lessee, concessionaire, or owner of the mineral lands. Ano naman yung quarry resources? Ito para ako kasi ang pag-iintindi ko lang sa quarry, parang minahan lang din halos, parang itibag-tibag mo yung bundok, kinukuha mo yung mga lupa, ganyan, di ba? Quarry resources shall mean any common stone, tama, tibag-tibag, no? Or other common mineral substances as the director of the Bureau of Mines and Geosciences may declare to be quarry resources such as but not restricted to marble, granite, volcanic cinders, basalt, tuff, and rock phosphate, provided that they contain no metal or other valuable minerals in economically workable quantities. Okay, that is section 151. Magpunta tayo sa section... ibang chapter na pala tayo, no? Section 152. Chapter 3 na tayo, Administrative Provisions Regulating Business or Persons Dealing in Articles Subject to Excise Tax. So, sandali lang, papahinga lang ako, ha? Iihi lang. Alright, so tayo pinagbabalik, no? Isang chapter lang pala, no? Chapter 151 lang yung excise tax on mineral products, no? Iisang provision lang siya. Isang section lang siya. Ngayon, magtungo na tayo sa chapter 6, yung, chapter 8, no? Administrative provisions regulating business or persons dealing in articles subject to excise tax. So, Section 152, extent of supervision over establishments producing taxable output. The Bureau of Internal Revenue has authority to supervise establishments where articles subject to excise tax are made or kept. The Secretary of Finance shall prescribe rules and regulations as to the mode in which the process of production shall be conducted insofar as may be necessary to secure a sanitary output and to safeguard the revenue. Section 153. Records to be kept by manufacturers, assessment based thereon. So sabi rito, manufacturers of articles subject to excise tax shall keep such records as required by rules and regulations recommended by the Commissioner and approved by the Secretary of Finance, and such records, whether on raw materials received into the factory or of articles produced therein, shall be deemed public and official documents for all purposes. Section 154, premises subject to approval by Commissioner. No person shall engage in business as a manufacturer or of dealer in articles subject to excise tax unless the premises upon which the business is to be conducted shall have been approved by the Commissioner. Lakas ng power ng Commissioner of the Bureau of Internal Revenue, no? Section 155, dito na yung may pagbabagong muling ginawa ang train law. Okay, manufacturers to provide themselves with counting or metering devices to determine production. Yun ang sinasabi rito. Yung mga manufacturer daw ng cigarettes, alcoholic products, oil products, and other articles subject to excise tax that can be similarly measured shall provide themselves with such necessary number of suitable counting or metering devices to determine as accurately as possible the volume, quantity, or number of the articles produced by them under the rules and regulations recommended by the Secretary of Finance upon recommendation of the Commissioner. Provided that the Department, sabi niya rito, provided that the Department of Finance shall maintain a registry of all petroleum manufacturers and or importers and the articles being manufactured and or imported by them. Provided further that the Department of Finance shall mandate the creation of a real-time inventory of petroleum articles being manufactured, imported, or found in storage depots of such petroleum manufacturers and or importers. Provided finally that importers of finished petroleum products shall also provide themselves with Bureau-accredited metering devices to determine as accurately as possible the volume of petroleum products imported by them. Yun ang sinasabi, yun ang dinagdag ng train law. This requirement shall be complied with before commencement of operation. So, bago ka maging isang manufacturer, no, kailangan mo munang ma-comply yung requirement na ito. Section 155 yun. Okay, tungo tayo sa Section 156. Walang pagbabago rito na dinulot ang train law. Labels and form of packages. All articles of domestic manufacture subject to excise tax and all leaf tobacco shall be put up and prepared by the manufacturer or producer when removed for sale or consumption in such packages only and bearing such marks or brand as shall be prescribed in the rules and regulations promulgated by the Secretary of Finance, and goods of similar character imported into the Philippines shall be likewise packed and marked in such a manner as may be required. Section 157, removal of articles after the payment of tax. When the tax has been paid when the tax has been paid on articles or products subject to excise tax, the same shall not thereafter be stored or permitted to remain in the distillery warehouse, bonded warehouse, or other factory or place where produced. However, upon prior permit from the Commissioner, oil refineries and their companies may store or deposit tax-paid petroleum products and commingle the same with its own manufactured products not yet subjected to excise tax. Imported petroleum products may be allowed to be withdrawn from customs custody without the prepayment of excise tax, which products may be commingled with the tax paid or bonded products of the importer himself after securing a prior permit from the commissioner, provided that withdrawal shall be taxed and accounted for on a first in, first out basis. Section 158, sabi niya rito, an internal revenue bonded warehouse may be maintained in any port of entry for the storing of imported or manufactured goods which are subject to excise tax. Excise tax pa rin pala yung pinag-uusapan natin. Minsan, nagbabasa ako, nawawala na sa isip ko. The taxes on such goods shall be payable only upon removal from such warehouse, and a reasonable charge shall be made for their storage therein. The Commissioner may, in his discretion, exact a bond to secure the payment of the tax on any goods so stored. Section 159, Proof of Exportation at yung Exporter's Bond. Sabi, yung mga exporters daw, ibig sabihin yung nagtitinda palabas ng bansa natin, ng goods that would be subject to excise tax, if sold or removed for consumption in the Philippines, shall submit proof of exportation satisfactory to the Commissioner, and when the same is deemed necessary, shall be required to give a bond prior to the removal of the goods for shipment, conditioned upon the exportation of the same in good faith. Kasi pag exportation, pag yung product na in-export mo, di ba zero rated? Kasi ini-encourage tayong mag-export. O ngayon, kapag yung i-export mo na produkto, subject ng excise tax kung hindi mo siya in-export. Kunwari, ginawa mo siya for consumption sa Pilipinas, subject siya ng excise tax. Di ba, sa dating pagbabasa natin, nire-require ka nilang magbigay ng bond kung magkano yung buwis na babayaran mo kung sakaling dito mo siya binenta. Kasi excisable siya dito Excisable, tama ba? Taxable siya rito ng excise tax So, yun yung bond mo. Sa pagkakaalam ko, ang mga bond naman ay pwedeng mabawi. Tapos kailangan mong ipatunayan sa commissioner na ikaw ay exporter. Okay, Section 160, Manufacturers and Importers Bond. Okay, basahin natin to. Ito daw, manufacturers and importers of articles subject to excise tax shall post a bond subject to the following conditions. So, ito na yun. Initial bond is pagka initial bond, okay, it is the amount shall be equal to 100,000 pesos, provided that if after 6 months of operation the amount of initial bond is less than the amount of the total excise tax paid during the period, the amount of the bond shall be adjusted to twice the tax actually paid for the period. Ito naman yung isang kondisyon, bonds for the succeeding years of operation. The bonds for the succeeding years of operation shall be based on the actual total excise tax paid during the year immediately preceding the year of operation. Such bond shall be conditioned upon faithful compliance during the time such business is followed with laws and rules and regulations relating to such business, and for the satisfaction of all fines and penalties imposed by this code. Okay, yun yung dalawa na kondisyon, okay, ng pagpapataw ng bond ng mga manufacturers and importers. Section 161, Records to be kept by wholesale dealers. Wholesale dealers shall keep records of their purchases and sales or deliveries of articles subject to excise tax in such form as shall be prescribed in the rules and regulations by the Secretary of Finance. These records and the entire stock of goods subject to tax shall be subject at all times to inspection of Internal Revenue officers. Section 162. Sabi rito, dealers in leaf tobacco shall keep records of the products sold or delivered by them to other persons in such manner as may be prescribed in the rules and regulations by the Secretary of Finance. Such records to be at all times subject to inspection of Internal Revenue officers. Section 163. All dealers whosoever shall preserve, utos yan sa lahat ng dealers, shall preserve for the period prescribed in Section 235 all official invoices received by them from other dealers or from manufacturers, together with the fractional parts of stamps affixed thereto, if any, and upon demand shall deliver or transmit the same to any internal revenue officer. Section 164, ito naman Sabi niya rito, manufacturers, indentors, wholesalers, and importers of any apparatus or mechanical contrivance, especially for the manufacture of articles subject to tax, shall, before any such apparatus or mechanical contrivance is removed from the place of manufacture or from the customs house, di ba? Bago mo kunin, yun ang ibig sabihin yan, bago mo alisin dun sa customs house, give written information to the Commissioner as to the nature and capacity of the same, the time when it is to be removed, and the place for which it is destined, as well as the name of the person by whom it is used. And such apparatus or mechanical contrivance shall not be set up, nor dismantled or transferred without a permit in writing from the Commissioner. A written permit from the Commissioner for importing, manufacturing, or selling of cigarette paper in bobbins or rolls, cigarette tipping paper, or cigarette filter tips is required. Written permit daw ng Commissioner required before any person shall engage in the importation, manufacture, or sale of the said articles. No permit to sell said articles shall be granted unless the name and address of the prospective buyer is first submitted to the Commissioner and approved by him. Records showing the stock of the said articles and the disposal thereof by sale of persons with their respective addresses as approved by the Commissioner shall be kept by the seller, and records showing stock of said articles and consumption thereof shall be kept by the buyer, subject to inspection by internal revenue officers. Magtungo na tayo sa Section 165. Sabi niyan, ito naman yung mga distillery warehouse. So, every distiller, when so required by the Commissioner, shall provide, sabi niya, at his own expense, a warehouse, and shall be situated in and constitute a part of his distillery premises and to be used only for the storage of distilled spirits of his own manufacture until the tax thereon shall have been paid. But no dwelling house shall be used for such purpose. Such warehouse, when approved by the Commissioner, is declared to be a bonded warehouse and shall be known as a distillery warehouse. Section 166, custody of distillery or distillery warehouse, no? Yun yung topic niya. Bawat distillery, every distillery or distillery warehouse shall be in the joint custody of the revenue inspector, if one is assigned thereto, and of the proprietor thereof. So sila ang dalawa may custody nun. The revenue inspector, kung meron mang in-assign yung BIR doon, and yung proprietor niya. It shall be kept securely locked, and shall at no time be unlocked or opened, or remain unlocked or opened, unless in the presence of such revenue inspector or other person who may be designated to act for him as provided by law. Section 167, limitation on quantity of spirits removed from warehouse. Sabi niya, no distilled spirits shall be removed from any distillery warehouse, or bonded warehouse in quantities of less than 15 gauge liters at any one time, except maliban sa bottled goods which may be removed by the case of not less than 12 bottles. Okay, yun ang ano niya ha. Kailangan, kumbaga hindi tingi. Parang ganun yung ibig niya sabihin. Section 168 naman tayo. Denaturing within premises. For the purposes of this title, the process of denaturing alcohol shall be effected only with the distillery premises where the alcohol to be denatured is produced in accordance with formulas duly approved by the Bureau of Internal Revenue, and only in the presence of duly designated representatives of said Bureau. Section 169. Sabi niya, manufacturers employing process in which denatured alcohol used in arts and industries is expressed or evaporated from the articles manufactured may, under the rules and regulations to be prescribed by the Secretary of Finance upon recommendation of the Commissioner, they may be permitted to recover the alcohol so used and restore it again to a condition suitable solely for use in manufacturing processes. Section 170, requirements governing rectification and compounding of liquors. Ayan. Sabi niya, persons engaged in the rectification or compounding of liquors shall, as to the mode of conducting their business and supervision over the same, be subject to all the requirements of law applicable to distilleries, provided that where a rectifier makes use of spirits upon which the excise tax has been paid, no further tax shall be collated on any rectified spirits produced exclusively therefrom. Provided further that compounders in the manufacture of any intoxicating beverage, whatever, shall not be allowed to make use of spirits upon which the excise tax has not been previously paid. Okay, magtungo tayo sa Section 171. Merong pagbabagong ginawa ang NIRC, ay ang train law sa NIRC. Ito yan. Sabi niya, ito ang pag-usapan kasi sa Section 171, yung authority of Internal Revenue Officer in searching for taxable articles. Gustong-gusto nila yan, no? Makahanap ng pagkukunan ng pera. pagkukunan ng pera ng gobyerno. Okay. Any Internal Revenue Officer may, in the discharge of his official duties, enter any house, building, or place where articles subject to tax under this title are produced or kept, or are believed by him upon reasonable grounds to be produced or kept, so far as may be necessary to examine, test, yan dinagdag ng train law, discover or seize the same. They may also stop and search any vehicle or other means of transportation when, upon reasonable grounds, he believes that the same carries any article on which the excise tax has not been paid. Subject to rules and regulations to be issued by the Secretary of Finance, the Commissioner of Internal Revenue or his authorized representative may conduct periodic random field tests and confirmatory tests on fuel required to be marked under Section 148A found in warehouses, storage tanks, gas stations, and other retail outlets, and in such other properties of persons engaged in the sale, delivery, trading, transportation, distribution, or importation of fuel intended for the domestic market. Di ba nga may requirement ng fuel markings, di ba? Yun daw. Provided, letter A, random field testing shall be conducted in the presence of revenue or customs officers, fuel marking provider, and the authorized representative of the owner of the fuel to be tested. Provided that an employee assigned or working at the place where the random field test is conducted shall be deemed an authorized representative of the owner. Letter B. All field tests daw shall be properly filmed or videotaped and documented. Very good itong dinagdag ng train law na ito. Para yung corruption, di ba? And letter C, yung corruption matigil kasi ipapasa mo mismo yung nangyari dun sa fuel marking. Letter C, a sample of the randomly tested fuel shall be immediately obtained by the revenue or customs officer upon discovering that the same is unmarked, adulterated, or diluted. Provided further that the confirmatory fuel test certificates issued by fuel testing facilities shall be valid for any legal purpose from the date of issue and shall constitute admissible and conclusive evidence before any court. So yun ang ating section 171. Magtungo naman tayo sa section 172. Detention of package containing taxable articles. So, any revenue officer daw may detain any package containing or supposed to contain articles subject to excise tax when he has good reason to believe that the lawful tax has not been paid or that the package has been or is being removed in violation of law, and every such package shall be held by such officer in a safe place until it shall be determined whether the property so detained is liable by law to be proceeded against for forfeiture. But such summary detention shall not continue in any case longer than 7 days without due process of law or intervention of the officer to whom such detention is to be reported. Okay? Magtungo na tayo sa Title 7. Title 7, which is yung documentary Stump Tax. Tingnan mo gaano kahaba. Mahaba. Di ba? Kasi mahalaga itong documentary stamp na to eh. Di ba kung kayo nga ay mag-take ng bar exams, nire-require kayo ng documentary stamp. Di ba? Tingnan natin, basahin natin. Okay, saan ba may pagbabago dito? 174, may pagbabago. 175, okay, sige. Section 173. Upon documents, instruments, loan agreements, and papers, and upon acceptances, assignments, sales, and transfers of the obligation, right of property, incident thereto, there shall be, so ulitin natin ha, sa mga dokumento, instrumento, loan agreements, and papers, acceptances, assignments, sales, and transfers of the obligation, right or property incident thereto, there shall be levied, collected, and paid for, and in respect of the transaction so had or accomplished, the corresponding documentary stamp taxes prescribed in the following sections of this title by the person making, signing, issuing, accepting, or transferring the same wherever the document is made, signed, issued, accepted, or transferred when the obligation or right arises from Philippine sources or the property is situated in the Philippines and the same time such act is done or transaction had. Okay. Provided that whenever one party to the taxable document enjoys exemption from the tax herein imposed, the other party who is not exempt shall be the one directly liable for the tax. Ito, unawain natin. Hindi ko rin masyadong nauunawaan to. Pero ang alam ko nga, tama siya sa lahat ng dokumento. Magpapanotaryo ka sa abogado, deed of sale, kung hindi ako nagkakamali. Transfer ng kahit na ano. Di ba nga, mag-a-apply ka to take, magpe-petition ka to take the bar exam. Required ang documentary stamp. Okay, section 174. May pagbabago yata ang train law dito. Okay. Stamp tax on original issue of shares of stock sa section 174. On every original issue, whether on organization, reorganization, or for any lawful purpose of shares of stock by any association, company, or corporation, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax of 2 pesos. 2 pesos na ngayon. 2 pesos on each 200 pesos or fractional part thereof of the par value of such shares of stock. Dati 1 peso lang on each 200 pesos. Tinaasan ng train law sa 2 pesos on each 200 peso or fractional part thereof or the par value of such shares of stock. Yun ang kinukuha ngayon. Provided that in the case of the original issue of shares of stock without par value, the amount of the documentary stamp tax herein prescribed shall be based upon the actual consideration for the issuance of such shares of stock. Provided further that in the case of stock dividends on the actual value represented by each share. Section 175. Sandali lang. Magpo-fuel marking lang ako. Okay, magbasa naman. Doon na tayo sa 175. Section 175. Ito naman yung stamp tax on sales, agreements to sell, memoranda of sales, deliveries or transfer of due bills, certificates of obligation, or shares of certificate of stock. Okay. Ito, marami-rami ring binago. Marami-rami ring binago ang train law dito. Sabi rito, on all sales or agreements to sell or memoranda of sale or deliveries or transfer of shares or certificates of stock in any association, company, or corporation, or transfer of such securities by assignment in blank, or by delivery or by any paper or agreement or memorandum or other evidences of transfer of sale, whether entitling the holder in any manner to the benefit of such stock, or to secure the future payment of money or for the future transfer of any stock, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax of 1 peso and 50 centavos on each 200 pesos or fractional part thereof of the par value of such stock, provided that only one tax shall be collected on each sale or transfer of stock or securities from one person to another, regardless of whether or not a certificate of stock is issued, endorsed, or delivered in pursuance of such state or of such sale or transfer. And provided further that in the case of stock without par value, the amount of documentary stamp tax herein prescribed shall be equivalent to 50% of the documentary stamp tax paid upon the original issue of said stock. Yun ang Section 175. Tungo naman tayo sa Section 176. Wala namang pagbabagong ginawa ang train law dito sa 176. Okay. Sabi rito, stamp tax on sales, agreements to sell, a memoranda of sales, deliveries or transfer of due bills, certificates of obligation, or shares of certificates of stock. On all sales or agreements to sell or memoranda of sale or deliveries or transfer of due bills, certificates of obligation, or shares of certificates of stock in any corporation, in any association, company, okay, o di naman transfer of such securities by assignment in blank or by delivery or by any paper or agreement or memorandum or other evidences of transfer or sale, whether entitling the holder in any manner to the benefit of such due bills, certificates of obligation or stock, or to secure the future payment of money or for the future transfer of any due bill, certificate certificate of obligation or stock. Sabi niya sa mga nabanggit na yon, There shall be collected a documentary stamp tax of 1 peso and 50 centavos on each 200 pesos or fractional part thereof of the par value of such due bill, certificate of obligation, or stock. So, 150 pesos ang documentary stamp tax. Sa bawat 200 pesos or fractional part thereof of the par value of such due bill. Ano ba yung halaga nung bill na due? At yung mga certificate of obligation o yung certificate of stock. Provided that only one tax shall be collected on each sale or transfer of stock or securities from one person to another, regardless of whether or not a certificate of stock or obligation is issued, endorsed, or delivered in pursuance of such a sale or transfer, and provided further that in the case of stock without par value, the amount of documentary stamp tax herein prescribed shall be equivalent to 25% of the documentary stamp tax paid upon the original issue of said stock. Yun ang 176. Eh ano naman ang 177? May pagbabago yatang ginawa rito. Meron nga, parang may pagbabago silang ginawa. Tuloy-tuloy, no? 177. Tingnan natin. Okay. Section 177. Stamp tax on certificates of profits or interest in property or accumulations. On all certificates of profits or any certificate or memorandum showing interest in the property or accumulations of any association, company, or corporation, and on all transfers of such certificates or memoranda, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax of 1 peso on each 200 pesos or fractional part thereof of the face value of such certificate or memorandum. Section 178, basahin na natin. Stamp tax on bank checks, drafts, certificates of deposit certificates of deposit not bearing interest, and other instruments. Sabi rito, on each bank check, draft, or certificate of deposit not drawing interest, or order for the payment of any sum of money drawn upon or issued by any bank, trust company, or any person or persons, companies, or corporations at sight or on demand, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax of 3 pesos. Yun 3 piso. How about Section 179? Stamp tax on all debt instruments. Sabi niya rito, on every original issue of debt instruments, there shall be collected documentary stamp tax of 1 peso and 50 centavos on each 200 pesos or fractional part thereof of the issue price of any such debt instrument. So, yun provided that for such debt instruments with terms of less than 1 year, the documentary stamp tax to be collected shall be of proportional amount in accordance with the ratio of its terms in number of days to 365 days. Provided further that only one documentary stamp tax shall be imposed on either loan agreement or promissory notes issued to secure such loan. For purposes of this section, the term debt instrument shall mean debt instrument representing borrowing and lending transactions, including but not limited to debentures, certificates of indebtedness, due bills, bonds, loan agreements, including those signed abroad, whether the object is of contract, including those signed abroad, wherein the object of contract is located or used in the Philippines, instruments and securities issued by the government or any of its instrumentalities, deposit substitute, debt instruments, certificates or other evidences of deposits that are either drawing interest significantly higher than the regular savings deposit, taking into consideration the size of the deposit and the risks involved, or drawing interest and having a specific maturity date, orders for payment of any sum of money otherwise than at sight or on demand, promissory notes, whether negotiable or non-negotiable, except bank notes. Hindi kasali ang bank notes issued for circulation. Ulitin natin, hindi kasali ang banknotes issued for circulation. So magbe-break lang ako ha. Ako yung magbabalik. Okay, okay. So tayo nagbabalik matapos ang parang matagal-tagal din yung break natin, ha? Parang 25 minutes din. 25 minutes din ako nag-break. Anyway, babalik na tayo sa section 180. Okay? 180. Okay, sige. Okay. Section 180 ng National Internal Revenue Code at kasama yung mga pagbabagong ginawa ng train law. Section 180, Stamp Tax on all bills of exchange drafts. Stamp tax on all bills of exchange or drafts. On all bill of exchange, sabi niya, between points within the Philippines or drafts, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax of 60 centavos on each 200 peso or fractional part thereof of the face value of any such bill of exchange or draft. Section 181, Stamp Tax upon acceptance of bills of exchange and others. Upon any acceptance or payment of any bill of exchange or order for the payment of money purporting to be drawn in a foreign country but payable in the Philippines, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax of 60 centavos on each 200 pesos or fractional part thereof of the face value of any such bill of exchange or order or the Philippine equivalent to such value if expressed in foreign currency. Section 182, Stamp Tax on foreign bills of exchange and letters of credit. In all foreign bills of exchange and letters of credit, including orders by telegraph or otherwise for the payment of money issued by express or steamship companies or by any person or persons, drawn in but payable out of the Philippines in a set of 3 or more according to the custom of merchants and bankers, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax of 60 centavos on each 200 pesos or fractional part thereof of the face value of any such bill of exchange or letter of credit or the Philippine equivalent of such face value if expressed in foreign currency. Section 183. Okay, on all policies of insurance or other instruments by whatever name the same may be called, whereby any insurance shall be made or renewed upon any life or lives, there shall be collected a one-time documentary stamp tax at the following rates. So ito, binago na ito ng train law. Sabi ng train law, if the amount of insurance does not exceed 100,000 pesos, exempt siya. If the amount of insurance exceeds 100,000 pesos but does not exceed 300,000 pesos, 20 pesos. If the amount of insurance exceeds 300,000 pesos but does not exceed 500,000 pesos, 50 pesos ang documentary stamp tax. If the amount of insurance exceeds 500,000 but that does not exceed 750,000 pesos, 100 pesos ang kanyang documentary stamp tax. If the amount of insurance exceeds 750,000 but does not exceed 1,150,000 pesos ang documentary stamp tax mo. If the amount of insurance exceeds 1 million, 200 pesos ang iyong documentary stamp tax. Okay, that is section 183. Magtungo muna tayo sa section 184 at section 185. Walang binago ang train law dito. Ang sabi niya, on all policies of insurance or other instruments, by whatever name the same may be called, by which insurance shall be made or renewed upon property of any description, including rents or profits against peril peril by sea or on inland waters or by fire or lightning, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax of 50 centavos on each 4 pesos or fractional part thereof of the amount of premium charged, provided, however, that no documentary stamp tax, sabi niya, no documentary stamp tax shall be collected on reinsurance contracts or on any instrument by which cession or acceptance of insurance risks under any reinsurance agreement is effected or recorded. Section 185. Stamp tax on fidelity bonds and other insurance policies. On all policies of insurance or bonds or obligations of the nature of indemnity for loss, damage, or liability made or renewed by any person, association, company, or corporation transacting the business of accident, fidelity, employer's liability, plate, glass, steam, boiler, burglar, elevator, automatic sprinkler, or other branch of insurance, hindi kasama or except life, marine, inland, and fire insurance, sabi niya. And all bonds, undertakings, or recognizances conditioned for the performance of the duties of any office or position for the doing or not doing of anything therein specified, and on all obligations guaranteeing the validity or legality of any bond or other obligations issued by any province, city, municipality, or other public body or organization, and on all obligations guaranteeing the title to any real estate or guaranteeing any mercantile credits which may be made or renewed by any such person, company, or corporation, sabi niya, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax of 50 centavos on each 4 pesos or fractional part thereof of the premium charge. So, hindi lang kasali doon sa lahat ng mga nabanggit natin, yung life, marine, inland, and fire insurance. Okay, magtungo na tayo sa section 186. No? May pagbabagong ginawa ang train law dito. Stamp tax on policies of annuities and pre-need plans. Okay? On all policies of annuities or other instruments by whatever name the same may be called, whereby an annuity may be made, transferred, or redeemed, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax of 1 peso on each 200 pesos or fractional part thereof of the premium or installment payment or contract price collected. On pre-need plans, the documentary stamp tax shall be 40 centavos on each 200 or fractional part thereof of the premium or contribution collected. Yun ang dinagdag ng train law. Okay, magtungo tayo sa section 187 kung saan walang binago ang train law. Stamp tax on indemnity bonds. So, on all bonds for indemnifying any person, firm, or corporation who shall become bound or engaged as surety for the payment of any sum of money or for the due execution or performance of the duties of any office or position or to account for money received by virtue thereof, and on all other bonds of any prescription except such as may be required in legal proceedings or are otherwise provided for herein, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax of 30 centavos on each 4 pesos. Ulitin natin, documentary stamp tax ang ikokolektahin sa'yo of 30 centavos on each 4 pesos or fractional part thereof of the premium charged. Ano to? Stamp tax on indemnity bonds yun, ha? Okay, section 188, may pagbabago yatang ginawa ang train law. Okay. Wait lang. Saan na ako? Section 188. Tama. 188 may binago ang train. Okay. Okay, stamp on certificates. On each certificate of damages or otherwise, and on every certificate or document issued by any customs officer, marine surveyor, or other person acting as such, and on each certificate issued by a notary public, and on each certificate of any registration required by law or by rules or regulations of a public office, or which is issued for the purpose of giving information or establishing proof of a fact, and not otherwise specified herein, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax of 30 pesos. Okay. Section 189. Stamp tax on warehouse receipts. On each warehouse receipt for property held in storage in a private or public warehouse or a yard for any person other than the proprietor of such warehouse or yard, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax of 30 pesos, provided that no tax shall be collected on each warehouse receipt issued to any one person in any one calendar month covering property the value of which does not exceed 200 pesos. Section 190. Stamp tax on high-alay horse racing tickets, lotto, or other authorized number games. Sabi, kokolektahin daw ay 20 centavos na documentary stamp tax provided that if the cost of the tickets exceeds 1 peso, an additional tax of 20 centavos on each every peso or fractional part thereof shall be collected. Yun, may documentary stamp tax. Okay, so kawawa din to mga owners ng high alay horse race. Naalala ko doon sa dati nating binasa, meron silang babayaran na malaking halaga, no? Plus, meron pa mga documentary stamp tax sa kanilang ticket sales, no? Section 191. Stamp tax on bills of lading or receipts. On each set of bills of ladings or receipts, hindi nga lang kasama, except charter party. So on each set of bills of ladings or receipts for any goods, merchandise, or effects shipped from one port or place in the Philippines to another port or place in the Philippines, hindi maliban sa dumaan sa ferries across rivers, no? Or to any foreign port, there shall be collected documentary stamp tax of 2 pesos if the value of such goods exceeds 100 pesos and does not exceed 1,000 pesos. 20 pesos naman if the value exceeds 1,000 pesos, provided however that freight tickets covering goods, merchandises or effects carried as accompanied baggage of passengers on land and water carriers primarily engaged in the transportation of passengers are hereby exempt. So yung hand carry mo, basta yung kaya mong bitbitin, exempt. Hindi kasali sa sisingilin ng documentary stamp tax. Okay, section 192, stamp tax on proxies. On each proxy for voting at any election for officers of any company or association or for any other purpose, maliban or except proxies issued affecting the affairs of associations or corporations organized for religious, charitable, or literary purposes, hindi sila kasama, no? There shall be collected a documentary stamp tax of 30 pesos. Section 193. Stamp tax on powers of attorney. So, on each power of attorney to perform any act whatsoever except acts connected with the collection of claims due from or accruing to the government of the Republic of the Philippines or the government of any province, city, or municipality, okay, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax of 10 pesos. Section 194, stamp tax on lease and other hiring agreements. Okay. On each lease agreement, memorandum, or contract for hire, use, or rent of any lands or tenements or portions thereof, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax of 6 pesos for the first 6 pesos for the first 2,000 pesos or fractional part thereof, and an additional 2 pesos for every 1,000 pesos or fractional part thereof in excess of the first 2,000 pesos for each year of the term of said contract or agreement. O ito sa mga lease, no? Rent, ganyan. Okay, Section 195, Stamp Tax on Mortgages, Pledges, and Deeds of Trust. On every mortgage, sabi, or pledge of lands, estate, or property, ito naman mga sinanla, no? Real property, real or personal, heritable or movable, whatsoever, where the same shall be made as a security for the payment of any definite and certain sum of money lent at the time or previously due and owing of forborne to be paid, being payable, and on any conveyance of land, paglilipat ng pangalan ng lupa, estate, or property whatsoever, sabi, in trust or to be sold or otherwise converted into money, which shall be and intended only as security either by express stipulation or otherwise, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax at the following rates. Ganito yon. Letter A, when the amount secured does not exceed 5,000 pesos, 40 pesos ang iyong documentary stamp tax. On each 5,000 pesos or fractional part thereof in excess of 5,000 pesos, an additional of 20 pesos na documentary stamp tax. On any mortgage, pledge, or deed of trust where the same shall be made as a security for the payment of a fluctuating account or future advances without fixed limit, the documentary stamp tax on such mortgage, pledge, or deed of trust shall be computed on the amount actually loaned or given at the time of the execution of the mortgage, pledge, or deed of trust. Additional documentary stamp tax shall be paid, which shall be computed on the basis of the amount advanced or loaned at the rates specified above. Provided, however, that if the full amount of the loan or credit granted under the mortgage, pledge, or deed of trust shall be computed on the amount actually loaned or given at the time of the execution of the mortgage, pledge, or deed of trust. However, if subsequent advances are made on such mortgage, pledge, or deed of trust, additional documentary stamp tax shall be paid, which shall be computed on the basis of the amount advanced or loaned at the rates specified above. Provided, however, that if the full amount of the loan or credit granted under the mortgage, pledge, or deed of trust is specified in such mortgage, pledge, or deed of trust, the documentary stamp tax prescribed in this section shall be paid and computed on the full amount of the loan or credit granted. Okay, magtungo na tayo sa section 196. Okay, stamp tax on deeds of sale and conveyance of real property. On all conveyances, donations, isinali na ng train law. Deeds, instruments, or writings other than grants, patents, or original certificates of adjudication issued by the government, whereby any land, tenement, or other realty sold shall be granted, assigned, transferred, donated, or otherwise conveyed to the purchaser or purchasers, or to any other person or persons designated by such purchaser or purchasers, or donee, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax at the rates herein below prescribed, based on the consideration contracted to be paid for such realty or on its fair market value determined in accordance with Section 6E of this code, whichever is higher, provided that when one of the contracting parties is the government, the tax herein imposed shall be based on the actual consideration. So letter A, when the consideration or value received or contracted to be paid for such realty after making proper allowance of any encumbrance does not exceed 1,015 pesos ang babayaran mong documentary stamp tax. Letter B, for each additional 1,000 pesos or fractional part thereof in excess of 1,000 pesos of such consideration or value, magbabayad ka ng documentary stamp tax na 15 pesos. Ito pa yung isang dinagdag ng train law. Transfers exempt from donor's tax under Section 101A and B of this code shall be exempt from the tax imposed under this section. Inilinaw niya yon kasi tinukoy din sa section na ito yung donations. Merong mga donations na o paglilipat na exempt. Yun nga yung mga tinukoy sa Section 101A and B of this code. When it appears that the amount of the documentary stamp tax payable hereunder has been reduced by an incorrect statement of the consideration in any conveyance, deed, okay, medyo na-disconnect tayo ng konti. Ituloy lang natin, no? Tuloy natin yung Section 196. Sabi niya, when it appears that the amount of the documentary stamp tax payable hereunder has been reduced by an incorrect statement of the consideration in any conveyance, deed, instrument, or writing subject to such tax, the commissioner, provincial, or city treasurer, or other revenue officer shall, from the assessment rolls or other reliable source of information, assess the property of its true market value and collect the proper tax thereon. Ayan. Okay, Section 197. Stamp tax on charter parties and similar instruments. Ito naman, para naman sa mga charter parties and similar instruments. On every charter party, contract, or agreement for the charter of any ship, vessel, or steamer, or any letter or memorandum or other writing between the captain, master, or owner, or other person acting as agent of any ship, vessel, or steamer, and any other person or persons for or relating to the charter of any such ship, vessel, or steamer, and on any renewal or transfer of such charter, contract, agreement, letter, or memorandum, there shall be collected a documentary stamp tax at the following rates. Letter A. If the registered gross tonnage of the ship, vessel, or steamer does not exceed 1,000 tons and the duration of the charter or contract does not exceed 6 months, 1,000 pesos ang babayaran mong documentary stamp tax. And for each month or fraction of a month in excess of 6 months, an additional tax of 100 pesos shall be paid. Documentary stamp tax po yun, ha. Letter B. If the registered gross tonnage exceeds 1,000 tons and does not exceed 10,000 tons and the duration of the charter or contract does not exceed 6 months, 2,000 pesos ang babayaran mong documentary stamp tax. And for each month or fraction of a month in excess of 6 months, magbabayad ka ng additional documentary stamp tax of 200 pesos. Letter C. If the registered gross tonnage exceeds 10,000 tons and the duration of the charter or contract does not exceed 6 months, ang babayaran mong documentary stamp tax ay 3,000 pesos. And for each month or fraction of a month in excess of 6 months, nagbabayad ka ng additional tax of 300 pesos. Okay. Okay. Nagtungo na tayo sa 198, Section 198. Wala naman kasing masyadong ipinagbago rito sa Section 198. Walang ginawang pagbabago ang train law. Sabi niya, upon each and every assignment or transfer of any mortgage, lease, or policy of insurance, or the renewal or continuance of any agreement, contract, charter, or any evidence of obligation or indebtedness by altering or otherwise, there shall be levied, collected, and paid a documentary stamp tax at the same rate as that imposed on the original instrument. May babaguhin ka, so same ang halaga ng documentary stamp tax mo doon sa unang binayaran mo doon sa iyong instrument. Section 199. Documents and papers not subject to stamp tax. Ano naman itong mga hindi kasali? Okay, letter A, policies of insurance or annuities made or granted by a fraternal or beneficiary society, order, association, or cooperative company operated on the lodge system or local cooperation plan, and organized and conducted solely by the members thereof for the exclusive benefit of each member and not for profit. Okay. Na ilang beses na nating nabasa ito. At sila, yung nag-grant sila ng insurance para lang sa benepisyo nila at hindi para sa kita, ito ay, ang tawag rito, exempt from documentary stamp tax. Ito pa. Letter B, certificates of oaths, yan, administered to any government official in his official capacity or of acknowledgement by any government official in the performance of his official duties. Kasali siguro dyan yung nung sumumpa ako nung ako'y naging government employee, no? Yung mga written appearance daw in any court by any government official in his official capacity. Certificates of the administration of oaths to any person as to the authenticity of any paper required to be filed in court by any person or party thereto where the proceedings be civil or criminal. Walang documentary stamp tax. Papers and documents filed in courts by or for the national, provincial, city, or municipal governments. Affidavits of poor persons for the purpose of proving poverty. Ito yung mga certificate of indigency yan, no? Statements and other compulsory information required of persons or corporations by the rules and the regulations of the national, provincial, city, or municipal governments exclusively for statistical purposes, and which are wholly for the use of the bureau or office in which they are filed, and not at the instance or for the use or benefit of the person filing them. Exempt yan, sa documentary stamp tax. Certified copies and other certificates placed upon documents, instruments, and papers for the national, provincial, city, or municipal governments made at the instance and for the sole use of some other branch of the national, provincial, city, or municipal governments, and certificates of the assessed value of lands not exceeding 200 pesos in value assessed, furnished by the provincial, city, or municipal treasurer to applicants for registration of title to land. Yan. Ano yan, mga exempt. Hindi sila subject ng documentary stamp tax. Section 200. Payment of documentary stamp tax. Okay. Letter A. In general, the provisions of Presidential Decree number 1045 notwithstanding any person liable to pay documentary stamp tax upon any document subject to tax under Title 7 of this code shall file a tax return and pay the tax in accordance with the rules and regulations to be prescribed by the Secretary of Finance upon recommendation of the Commissioner. Letter B. Time for filing and payment of tax, except as provided by the rules and regulations promulgated by the Secretary of Finance. Upon recommendation of the Commissioner, the tax return prescribed in this section shall be filed within 10 days after the close of the month when the taxable document was made, signed, issued, accepted, or transferred, and the tax thereon shall be paid at the same time the aforesaid return is filed. Letter C. Where to file. Except in cases where the Commissioner otherwise permits, the aforesaid tax return shall be filed with and the tax due shall be paid through the authorized agent bank within the territorial jurisdiction of the Revenue District Office, which has jurisdiction over the residence or principal place of business of the taxpayer. In places where there is no authorized agent bank, the return shall be filed with the Revenue District Officer, collection agent, or duly authorized treasurer of the city or municipality in which the taxpayer has his legal residence or principal place of business. Letter D, ano naman yung mga exception? Okay, in lieu of the foregoing provisions of this section, the tax may be paid either through purchase and actual affixture or by imprinting the stamps through a documentary stamp metering machine on the taxable document in the manner as may be prescribed by rules and regulations to be promulgated by the Secretary of Finance upon recommendation of the Commissioner. Ayun yung namili ka ng document, stamp tax, tapos dinikit sa dokumento. Okay, yun yung ibig niya sabihin. Okay, Section 201, Effect of Failure to Stamp Taxable Document. An instrument, document, or paper which is required by law to be stamped and which has been signed, issued, accepted, or transferred without being duly stamped shall not be recorded, nor shall it or any copy thereof or any record of transfer of the same be admitted or used in evidence in any court until the requisite stamp or stamps are affixed thereto and cancelled. Okay, so sa haba ng aking pagbabasa ngayon ay nalobat na ako. So nagtatapos tayo sa Section 201, no? Kaya ko pa sana magbasa pero tapusin na natin sa Section 201 at mag-pray muna tayo. Okay. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. In the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So sana next time, samahan nyo ulit ako magbasa-basa. At subukan natin ipaliwanag yung mga provision ng batas in layman's term, no? Sa paraang maiintindihan nating lahat. So God bless, and see you again.